everyone, and welcome to First Things First with Chris Carter and Nick Wright. I am Jenna Wolf. We are finally here, the start of the NBA Finals, the greatest time of the year for you, Nick Wright. Probably you.
Game one of the NBA Finals, game one of hopefully more than 4, maybe 5. Could we get to 6? Is there a possibility for 7?
Let's try to get to an entertaining game number 1.
Okay.
And all right, before we try to
from there.
stretch out the NBA season.
What's the point spread right now?
12. It's a 12-point spread for Golden State in game 1.
Is that higher or lower than what you had originally anticipated?
I mean, if you'd asked me after the Warriors beat the Rockets, I said the Warriors will be at least 10-point favorites. The Cavs have not done well in game 1's the last 2 series against Golden State and Golden State. But we'll see what happens tonight.
They got a lot going for them then.
Yes,
It should be fun. All right, let's talk about it. If you are a fan of the same 2 teams playing 4 straight times, then this year's NBA Finals is for you. Cavs and Warriors tip off tonight for the 4th straight year, and while the bulk of the Warriors remain the same from years past, this Cavs team is clearly not as deep or as talented as the last few years. But Cleveland still has LeBron James, and LeBron James has proven he could single-handedly win games. Also, he kind of loves this challenge.
Listen, Golden State is one of the best teams I've ever played. It's one of the best teams that's ever been assembled. And then they added Kevin Durant. So what does that do to him? It even makes him even more dangerous and, even more powerful and great. And, and it's just, it's for me as a competitor, it's fun. It's truly fun. And to know when I'm done playing a game of basketball, to know I played against some of the greatest teams I ever played, ever been assembled. And this is one of them.
All right, so, CeCe, what do the Cavs have to do to forget win, just to have a chance in Game 1 tonight?
Well, it's nice to hear LeBron and hear him talk how he addresses the challenge. And LeBron's been to the finals 9 times. I think I'm correct in this, Nick. Only 2 times his team has been the favorite.
They were favored in 2011 against Dallas, and the first time they played the San Antonio Spurs, that's it. Underdogs every other time.
And the last 8 times, this is the least talented team of the last 8. All right, what LeBron did that first time with that Cavs team, them being a very, very stingy defense with LeBron James, but the last 8 times, not the talent going onto the court. So LeBron he wants to step up to the challenge. To me, it reminds me of the days back in the playground when you had one guy who was a superstar. And I know this because my brother Butch, he's the best player in Ohio, one of the top 20 in America. And he used to go to the park and it'd be like, okay, Butch is on one team. He'd tell the other guys, y'all select whoever y'all want, and I'll take the rest of them. And there were times where Butch would give us the business with the rest of them. And that's what LeBron James is like. He's got the players no one else wants in this series. And he's going to try to steal a couple games away from potentially the greatest basketball team, definitely the best shooting basketball team that we've seen. So he's looking forward to the challenge. LeBron wants to be the greatest player ever and wants to be compared to the greatest player ever. To me, this is his greatest challenge.
So how can the Cavs be competitive? Because in 2016, they won the series. They lost the first 2 games by a combined 48 points. In Golden State. In 2017, they lost in 5. They lost the first 2 games by a combined 41 points in Golden State. So whether they win the series, lose the series, they've never done well. The last time they did well in a game 1 against the Warriors was an overtime loss the first time these 2 teams played, the game Kyrie Irving got hurt. So what has to happen? LeBron absolutely unequivocally cannot have a feel-out game. We saw him have feel-out games in the game 1s of each of the 3 playoff series.
Feel-out meaning feel what the defense is giving you, look at what they're setting.
Try to spend more time getting other guys involved than attacking the basket. Kind of reserve. If the game's starting to get away, I'm going to leave something in the tank, go get them game 2. Here's why I know he can't have a feel-out game. Zach Lowe wrote a great article this week talking about how LeBron's playoff run up to this point, giving you 34, 9, and 9 on 54% shooting, might be the greatest run-up to an NBA Finals we've ever seen from any player in league history. And that's been barely enough against far inferior teams. So think about that. The greatest individual run has barely been enough against teams that are nowhere near as good as Golden State. So the first baseline minimum is LeBron's got to have at least a 30-point triple-double type of performance, maybe a high 30-point performance. If you're not going to get the triple-double, a 40-point performance. That's how they stay competitive. And then after that, you start asking, can the Cavs get some stops? Do they have anyone to match up on Kevin Durant? Are they going to be asking LeBron to do that offensively and guard Kevin Durant for 30 minutes?
Yes.
Because you think they are.
Well, you have to. I don't know about 30 minutes, but the way the lineups are set, if they're going to play Tristan Thompson, and if Kevin Love is healthy, that allows Kevin Love to not be exposed on the defensive end as far as guarding Looney or Draymond. Neither one of those players, Draymond barely getting in double figures, not shooting the ball, not playing with a lot of confidence. And LeBron's got to guard KD. Now, to me, that adds to the legacy of who he is, regardless of how the finals is played out. How does LeBron do head-to-head versus KD?
Is Kevin Love the only second option? Do you see any scenario by which, I don't know, JR, who's been invisible, CC, 2 years ago, he came out and played lights out in the finals. Is there any other second option that LeBron has besides Kevin Love?
I got blind faith for LeBron. I can't appropriate that faith to any of the other Cavs. I mean, Kevin Love, we've dropped our standards so much on Love. Kevin Love, can he play? Can he get 15 and 10? He was a 25 and 12 guy. Now we're asking for 15 and 10. I haven't seen a two guard that has the type of talent of JR or have the resume that's gone a complete about face and not be able to find the basketball. JR in Boston averaged 2 points as a shooter.
In Boston.
Yeah, 2 points.
He made 6 shots in the 4 games.
I mean, Jen, he's averaging one more point than me and you. I mean, as a shooting guard, when LeBron has needed the most help, everyone know he needs help. And it's not as if he's struggling with some type of injury. So if Golden State, if any of the top 3 players, maybe not Klay, but if Steph or KD are on the Pacers, I don't believe the Cavs are here. So when you talk about this historic run that LeBron has been on and it barely got him through, the team he's facing in Golden State is one of the all-time great teams.
All right, so I'm going to throw a wrinkle out there, assuming Kevin Love's playing tonight. If Kevin Love's not playing tonight, it's a whole other set of issues. But let's assume he clears the concussion protocol and he is able to play tonight. What if you almost try to bait the Warriors into going with mismatches to their worst players? And by that, I mean this. What if you don't start Tristan Thompson? What if you start Kevin Love at the 5, Jeff Green at the 4, LeBron at the 3, and then JR and George Hill? And we say, you know what? Kevin Love, you're guarding Kevon Looney. And the Warriors, guess what? You can get Kevon Looney post-ups as much as you want. That then allows Jeff Green to guard Durant and LeBron to guard Draymond. And then if the Warriors are going to beat you by Kevon Looney having 28 points, you'll take it. And then maybe you can stretch the floor on offense a little bit more. Now, that takes Tristan out, that takes your energy guy out, that takes your only rim protector out. There are no great options here. But I would be doing different things to where I am trying to my number one goal as a Cavs defense is don't let Steph and Klay get off the way. I've never seen the Warriors, let me put it like this. I cannot remember a game where the Splash Brothers looked like the Splash Brothers and the Warriors lost. I've seen Kevin Durant go for 37 and the Warriors lose. Happened game 2 against Houston.
Yeah.
I've seen games where the Warriors dominate you down low and somehow lose. I can't remember a game where Steph and Klay are going Steph and Klay and the Warriors don't end up winning that game. So I think Ty Lue, this is a hell of a task for him, trying to find what Ty Lue needs is to be able to play with 6 guys. Because then it's like, oh, we'll have this guy on the offense, this guy on defense. You can't do that. So you're going to have to, there are no great options. You're going to have to pick your best of some bad options.
One thing I worry about, because people haven't talked about him, I worry about Klay Thompson. And worry from how do the Cavs hold him down? Because JR has not played really well on the offensive end. Klay, because they have George Hill and JR as the backcourt, Klay doesn't have to exert the type of energy that he would typically have to in a series like this.
He was guarding Kyrie the last 3 years.
So he's relieved. So Klay, it might be hard to keep him from scoring 30 points. So monumental task by the Cavaliers coming out, but that a first initial, we always talk about that third quarter, but that a first quarter, Are the Cavs still within reach after the first quarter? It's a big question mark in tonight's game.
All right, we'll take a break there. Coming up, more about LeBron. Will he even consider the Philadelphia 76ers in free agency with what's happening with the Brian Colangelo situation? That's next. First things first. New topic now. As of this morning, Sixers GM Brian Colangelo still has a job. This after a report from The Ringer that he used 5 separate burner accounts to attack players on his roster, including Joel Embiid and Markelle Fultz. Colangelo claims, quote, "Someone's out to get me. This is clearly not me." And now a new report that Colangelo's wife has the phone number associated with 3 of the 5 burners. Lot to process here, Nick. Should the Sixers' young core want Colangelo gone? Because this is what it really comes down to. Whether he has the job or not, do the players that he has there trust him? And this is a super important offseason. They absolutely need him.
All right, so
or need someone in that position.
I've been following this story as closely as you can because I find it fascinating.
Yep.
And it's confusing. The local Philadelphia blog Crossing Broad overnight did one of their own investigations about some comments that have been left for the last couple years on newspaper articles that seem to be tied to some of these same Twitter users with inside information on Philadelphia, inside information on Toronto, which is, of course, where Colangelo was. Now there's the association with reportedly the wife's phone number. There's no way to read this situation to me as anything other than this was Colangelo doing the tweeting or someone doing the tweeting on his behalf
with his
in
knowledge.
cahoots with his knowledge and with information.
Because the information
came from him. Like, the wife doesn't work for the team, and there's inside information there. So I couldn't trust him if I were these guys. I mean, one of these tweets is to Ben Simmons. I almost thought it was CeCe's burner account. It said, shoot the 3, you coward. And that was the player he was nicest to on these, or whoever was tweeting.
Wait, he went after Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid.
No, he went after Fultz and Embiid. No, you're right. You're correct. Mm-hmm. Absolutely right. He went after Simmons and Embiid. And so he talked about Fultz's situation with his family. He talked about Jaleel, or whoever tweeted, talked about Jaleel for his medical situation. So if I'm one of these players, I can't trust the guy. I can't trust the guy with information, and this is maybe just as damaging, I can't trust the guy that what he tells me is the truth. Because he wasn't communicating these things, or whomever wasn't communicating these things when he met with these guys one-on-one. So long way to answer your question, no, I wouldn't want him as my GM. I wouldn't want him to control my basketball destiny.
The players is one set of issues that the owner, because to me it's about the owners, all right? Because the owner owns the team. The GM, he don't work for the players, he works for the owner. So is the owner comfortable moving forward where you have a franchise that we know where the 76ers have been the last 5 years, 10 years, and you are on the verge of potentially doing something special. Now, as an owner, do you want to move forward, and this could be a stumbling block to you improving? Because, see, I don't see the roster improving with Colangelo still staying there on the roster, because I believe it will potentially affect free agents, and there's too much smoke for him to be cleared of all this. Now, they're going to do an investigation. The man right now, he's innocent until proven guilty, but I mean, he's got a couple incriminating things, the phone number and other things that are hard to explain. When you're dealing with technology, there's always some type of fingerprint, all right? So to me, I don't believe he's going to be able to go unscathed in this. The owner, there's no way the owner would want to trust him moving forward, because it would affect the players. And if I'm in the locker room and if he said something about me, I want it investigated. And if he did do this, I want him fired immediately. The type of information that he put out there about players, their personal, their medical history, and, you know, he knows better. I mean, he's been around basketball his whole life. And a lot of people would say he's been very privileged. He's gotten a lot of jobs potentially because of his dad. And this right here, I believe, will end his basketball career as far as the NBA executive.
But, Nick, it's not just about the players in that locker room. It's other potential free agents that could come there. It's other general managers that are going to be having conversations with him about what they're going to do. It's this team going into the most important offseason, arguably, of its history with a guy like LeBron James looming.
And listen, and let's just say today, LeBron came out and announced, I'm going anywhere but Philly. Or LeBron announced, I'm opting into my deal in Cleveland. This would still be an enormous offseason for Philadelphia. Because as we've discussed before, it's too complicated to get into it because of how their contract and their young players' extensions kick in. The offseason where they can most easily add a max free agent is right now. And if they don't do it right now, they are going to be hard-pressed to do it without dealing one of those assets. So even if LeBron's off the board, even if LeBron says I'm staying or going to Houston, there's Paul George out there.
Yes.
Boogie Cousins isn't a fit, but there's other guys. There's other ways you can improve your basketball team.
Yeah, potentially you could trade for Kawhi Leonard.
Exactly right. And let's talk about the trade for Kawhi Leonard for a second. You think Greg Popovich right now would feel comfortable discussing that with Brian Colangelo? Do you think if
no.
No shot.
Right.
Absolutely.
If the Spurs,
where Pop is right now as far as information stuff being leaked out, dealing with more stuff than right now, no. There's no way Pop would want to deal with that.
So how can you do your job? Like, that's the thing is, it is a relationship and trust job in addition to player evaluation.
And I expect Philadelphia to do the right thing, a thorough investigation, but they're against the clock. As far as free agency, they can't take their time. Like, they have to make up their mind, is he the guy to move forward with? And they have to be able to do something with the players because, man, LeBron going to call one of the guys on the team. All right? When the ownership call him, LeBron's just going to call the guys on the team. You know, he's got relationship with those guys, and he's going to find out what the real deal is. And you don't want that information to linger on and have LeBron make a decision absent of them making a decision on Colangelo's future.
But just think about it. If you're at a job and your boss reportedly said something about you to the world and it's out there, you could say all you want, well, you know, he's innocent until proven guilty. But it's out there, you hear it, and that's just the way the world works. Like, it's sitting in that locker room.
And because the sensitive information, some stuff, it's not just Jahlil Okafor's alleged failed physical. It's stuff about Markelle Fultz's family that Markelle Fultz didn't want to be public knowledge, that only people in tight NBA circles knew.
Right. Also, the thoughts that he potentially faked his injury.
Right. There's that. There's so many things there that even if the result of this investigation is his wife went rogue, I think it's still fireable.
She has to find out somehow.
And even if it was just, man, I share things, I think we all share things like with our spouses that are not, we don't expect to ever get out there. Sometimes it's not your fault, but I think that's the least likely of the scenarios. But I want to add one other thing that I said yesterday on the show that I think is important. Sometimes you don't want to fire a GM before your biggest offseason because who are you going to hire? Like, you got a big offseason. We got these free agents to go after. The Cavs didn't bring back David Griffin. They didn't have someone in place. They tried to hire Chauncey Billups. They couldn't hire Chauncey Billups. It ended up leading to the Kyrie Irving trade. You have a great GM in the waiting in David Griffin, I believe.
I thought you were going to say Sam Hinkie.
No, not Sam. I mean, Sam Hinkie, that's interesting. Bring back the process. But you have David Griffin sitting right there who LeBron likes, who is well respected in the league and who's been waiting for the right job. Philadelphia is an attractive job.
Yeah, but you have to do the investigation. You have to be fair to him. You got to make sure to clear everything up so that you can move forward with these superstar players.
All right, we'll break there. Talk more about this coming up. Steph Curry's got some words for the haters out there next on First Things First. NBA Finals Game 1 tonight. Andre Iguodala's leg contusion has not improved, and the former Finals MVP will not be on the floor, though he says he's not that far away. Chris, how big of a blow is this for the Warriors?
Well, it's not a big blow because they got so much more talent than the Cavs. Like, I was more concerned with the Houston. Like, if they would have lost to Houston, this would have been one of the reasons why his absence, what he can do, his overall versatility, and some of the pressure that he relieves from other players like Clay and KD, especially on the defensive end. His versatility is priceless. So he's not going to be missed in this series.
Yeah, listen, he's their fifth most important player. If the biggest injury you deal with in a 4-year run in the NBA Finals is your fifth most important player, you're going to be okay. And I know there's this narrative out there that he is this LeBron James stopper in the Finals. LeBron in the Finals in the last 3 years has averaged 33, 12, and 9 on nearly 50% shooting. So I haven't seen the evidence of that anyway.
Moving on, many agree that the aforementioned LeBron James carried a subpar Cavs supporting cast to the NBA Finals, but don't ask Warriors head coach Steve Kerr. Kerr said, quote, "We know what these guys can do. You don't get to the finals with one man, no matter how good that one man is." What are your thoughts, Nick, on Steve Kerr's comments?
If he means it literally, as if it was just LeBron James taking the court 1-on-5, then I agree. They would have fared a little worse against Boston. If he means it figuratively, he's wrong. Like, this is as much you don't win the finals with just one guy, but LeBron showed over the last 6 weeks you can get there with just one guy showing up.
LeBron James, come on. It's been the most spectacular year of his career. Now, I understand Steve Kerr, this is the whole theory. Every player, all the coaches are saying this because that's what they're just trying to get through this series. And also, they want to put more validity on potentially on their third championship. Oh, this is a great team over there.
Exactly.
Oh, they got a bunch of guys helping them. Yeah, stop it.
Exactly.
That's when I should have used the Pinocchio nose.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
I got to get my emojis together.
Tiger Woods is back. Well, he's back on the course at least. He tees off at the Memorial Tournament in Dublin, Ohio at 8:26 a.m. CC, what are your thoughts on Dublin? And also, what do you expect from Tiger?
One of my favorite golf courses in the world. I was invited to play in the Pro-Am, but Jenna, I turned down the money and the opportunity.
To stay with me?
Well, to stay here. I love that golf course. It's a great tournament. Tiger Woods has won it 5 times before. Wouldn't be surprised at all if Tiger got into contention for the weekend. If he can get into the top 5 on Sunday, he can get his first win in a couple years.
This is what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that sometime this weekend I got the same phone call that I got from Chris Carter a few weekends ago, which is, Nick, wake up. I know you were out last night. Wake up. Tiger's 6 under through 8 holes like you did in the last tournament he played in. Come on, get a win, Tiger. It's a tournament he has great success at. Get a win, Tiger.
All right, finally, moving on, Le'Veon Bell isn't the only big-time star causing issues at OTAs. The other 2 members of the Steelers trio were also not in attendance. Ben Roethlisberger attended the first day and hasn't been there since. And Antonio Brown made it to day 2 before taking leave. CeCe, what are your thoughts on Ben and Brown's absence?
See, did Antonio criticize L. Bell for not being there?
Oh, tell me he can get things done. You know, he can get more things done if you negotiate, if you're here.
Okay, got it. And Antonio's got the contract, right?
Yes.
He's the highest paid receiver in the league.
Yes, he got
he
the
showed
money.
up for a couple days.
Yeah, a couple
and
days.
And then he's like, I'm good.
Guest appearance.
I don't
got
have
my
too much
contract.
to get done. And I know Antonio's a hard worker, so he's not. I'm sure he's not just on a beach somewhere. But it's still interesting time.
No. He is a hard worker, but this is kind of the dysfunction that goes along with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah, one day you got a star player saying, hey, man, L. Bell, one of the reasons why, he's not getting the contract extension because he's not here. He's not around. But they've been missing OTAs for years. It's not like they've been Tom Brady, like Big Ben. Like Big Ben's one of the hardest workers ever in the history of sport. Absolutely no. But they've been successful with this dysfunction as a family. Coach Mangini told us different families got different rules. This is what they do in Pittsburgh. But what it does is it puts a strain on the other players. When you're trying to tell them that everything is important and your star players aren't bought into, oh, it's voluntary, but it's not mandatory. So it becomes, you have a double standard that you start to set amongst the players. Now, Pittsburgh, they've been able to function around that, but I tell you guys all the time, when you start getting December and January, these are the types of things that come out in the game of the team not being connected.
Doesn't Pittsburgh have a new offensive coordinator?
Yep.
Like, isn't it partly because Big Ben didn't like Todd Haley? Like, you think the new offensive coordinator would like to have Big Ben there? I mean, I don't know. I would imagine he does. In general, unless there are extenuating circumstances, I try not to criticize guys for not showing up to the voluntary portions of the workouts because they negotiate in the CBA, they're not mandatory, and in the media too often we treat them as if they are. But there are extenuating circumstances for both of these players. In AB's case, it's what we talked about. He spoke out about L. Bell not being there. If you're going to do that, you need to be there. And in Big Ben's case, it's the whole Mason Rudolph stuff. You can't go on the radio and disparage the guy, in my eyes, misrepresent what the guy said about your guys' relationship, then try to clean it up and say, oh, of course I'll help. I remember how guys helped me. And then show up to one day OTAs and not be there to help. Like, you think I know Mason Rudolph now, I guess, gets more reps. And Josh Dobbs is maybe the guy who benefits from this the most, who's trying to make the roster. But isn't it better for Mason Rudolph for Big Ben to be there?
Of course
Can't
it
he
is.
learn more with Big Ben there? Like, that's the part of this that, and if you're going to skip it, I don't understand the showing up for one day. Like, and quarterbacks are held to a different standard. Like, it's one thing for a lot of guys not to be there, certain guys not to be there. Your franchise quarterback, your Super Bowl winning quarterback, after the comments he's made this offseason, that's what rubs me the wrong way.
And especially after the new offensive coordinator. It becomes very important because how's he going to communicate? Even if he's going to run the same exact system, his voice in your ear, which is going to be totally different to Big Ben, he should be there getting this offseason work. I believe the OTAs are important. I believe they're just as important as all the other things. Running in the offseason, lifting weights, going to training camp, all these things are essential in keeping your development and staying on top of your development as a pro football player.
So where do you both fall on Le'Veon Bell not being there?
I mean, we knew he wasn't going to be there. Until
Right.
he
No, guys don't have contracts. They shouldn't be there because if they get hurt, like they don't have the long-term commitment and the guaranteed dollars. They should not be there until they have to be there. Because of training camp, we have seen at least 4 players that have suffered season injuries just in the OTA.
So if you have a contract, you should be at camp, at OTAs.
Well, if you don't have a contract, you certainly shouldn't be there. If you do have a contract, I think you would prefer guys be there.
This is the thing. I do understand certain guys. You reach a certain point, if you've been inside an offense. Before Mark Ingram Jr. got suspended and we got knowledge of that, he wasn't going to be at the OTAs because he's been in the same system with Sean Payton. He wanted to work on some other conditioning things, some explosive things, some sprinting things that the staff of the Saints, they don't provide that type of exercise or that type of training regimen. So there are examples. Tom Brady, at this point in his career, he's got the same coordinator. They're running the same stuff. Where he is as far as trying to recharge his battery, I understand. So it's not just etched in stone. Every player that has a contract should be there. No, you have to have some flexibility because you know you're going to have circumstances that you might have to extend it just a little bit. Players understand that, but just unexcused absences where A, B, and Ben are with this team, I expect it because I've seen it their whole career, and I've seen it come out of Pittsburgh.
All right, let's break there. Let's get back to some basketball now. The NBA Finals. If you had money on the Warriors winning it all before the start of the season, congratulations, you're not a big risk taker. If you had money on me understanding that action, now that's a risk.
Despite many tutorials.
But despite that, and despite entering the season as favorites to win it all, and despite having debatedly 2 of the top 3 players in the NBA, 4 straight NBA Finals appearances, still impressive. Also appearances. Here's Steph on the journey this season.
This year's been interesting with ups and downs and injuries, and even in the playoffs as of late, you know, having how we started games, coming out of the gate slow and fighting our way back in the second half. All that stuff is just a part of continue to grow and find ways to motivate yourself, but stay appreciative of the moment because I think that you saw that on all our faces after Game 7 of the Houston series, where this means a lot to us, and there's an appreciation for the difficulty to get back to this stage, let alone try to win 4 more games and win a championship. So we're living in the moment.
All right, Nick, let's talk about how impressive this feat is, getting to the NBA Finals 4 straight times.
My answer may surprise you guys here, but I find this wildly impressive. I understand they're the most talented team ever. I understand they added Kevin Durant, but I am enough of a student of NBA history. I watched a Laker team with Shaq and Kobe in their primes. 3 straight NBA championships, get bounced in round 2. I watched a Piston team go to 3 straight NBA Finals, get swept before they got back to a 4th. You want to go all the way back to the 71 Lakers. They lose in the conference finals after going to 3 straight NBA Finals. It is hard to get to 4 straight. There's a reason why Magic's Lakers did it once, Bird's Celtics did it once, LeBron's franchise unto himself did it once in Miami and now once in Cleveland, and now these guys. And that's it in the last 60 years of NBA history. And they haven't done it without being on the brink. They had to play 3 consecutive elimination games to get to their 2nd NBA Finals, including a Game 6 on the road against OKC before they had Kevin Durant. They had to play back-to-back elimination games, including a Game 7 on the road to get to their 4th straight NBA Finals. Like, I do not take this for granted. I might not love the way the Warriors constructed their team. I might not love some of the personalities on that team. But to get here when I doubted if they could. I talked about all year long how hard 4 straight is, how the injuries can catch up. And that's one other thing I'll say is I give them credit. They've stayed healthy. That's hard, man. Some of that's luck, but some of that's a skill. And their ability to have essentially their entire team intact this time of year, every year, is very impressive to me. So I give them a ton of credit for this.
I would say I'm not as impressed as with you because to me it's not 4 years in a row making it to the finals. It's 2 different stories. All right? You have the Warriors, the first edition, and that got to the finals, won. Next year came back, best record in NBA, 73 wins, NBA record, but blew a championship to the Cleveland Cavaliers, up 3-1. Oh, so what they do? They went out and got the second best player in the world. So for me, they haven't been to 4 straight with Kevin Durant. They went to 2. They had a great collection of players, one of the best collection of players we've seen. Then they went out and got the second best player available. And with Kevin Durant, they've gone to 2 straight. I haven't been that impressed with it. They went 7 games one time in this last 2 years with Kevin Durant. They weren't pushed last year in the playoffs at all. They got pushed one time this year in the playoffs. So to me, it's not as impressive because of when they went out and got Kevin Durant. If they had done this without Kevin Durant, this would be one of probably the most impressive things that I've seen in the NBA in the last 30 years. But when you go out and get KD, when you were already a 73-win team, you didn't get an old, washed-up KD like a lot of these other great teams tried to do. They tried to retread the tires on other great players.
Karl Malone, Gary Payton.
Yeah, but no, they went out and got the second-best player in his prime. So I'm not overly impressed with 4 years in a row because it's really about 2 and 2.
Were you more impressed, though, with the Warriors' run-up this year than last year? I know you think that this past year was a little harder. It's hard to refocus. It's hard to get the energy up, even if you have Kevin Durant. But comparing last year with Durant and this year with Durant, which was a more impressive and harder year?
I think last year. Well, more impressive and harder are different things. Last year, the way to bring him in, to make that work almost instantly, and to sweep round 1, sweep round 2, sweep round 3, and then go up 3-0 in the NBA Finals.
Yeah. San Antonio without their best player, New Orleans without their second best player, and no bench.
You're talking about this year?
Yes.
So because this year was harder, isn't that more impressive?
I don't make it harder just because they went 7 games. I said it to be easier. San Antonio didn't have Kawhi, all right? New Orleans didn't have Boogie. Now, if they had all those players, and they had gone through that gauntlet, I would have been like, man, that's massively impressive.
The reason that this year in particular, I'm not giving them as much credit as last year is also because I don't like teams in general that punt on a regular season. And that's one of the reasons why people think, because I lived in Houston for 4 years, that's why I wanted the Rockets to win. I wanted the Rockets to win because I wanted the regular season to be meaningful. It's one of the reasons I thought the Chris Paul injury was so devastating. Like, the Warriors were going to have to pay the bill that was due for punting on the regular season. But they were, whatever my feelings on it are, they were in an elimination game down 17 in the first quarter, down 10 at halftime. They blew the Rockets out in Game 6. They were in an elimination game down 11 at halftime. They blew the Rockets out in games. They didn't blow the Rockets out, but they ended up winning Game 7. Like, I give them credit for it. It's hard to do in the league. Like, so you're right, C, that it's not the same iteration team. It's not like Shaq and Kobe's Lakers, where it was, for all intents and purposes, the same guys. Shaq and Kobe's Lakers didn't go add Tracy McGrady, halfway through, and then it's like, hey, this is what we've got. I get that part of it, but it's still hard, man. And the mental and physical fatigue of playing this many consecutive 100-game seasons, I don't think can be discounted.
Yeah, now I disagree as far as the regular season. I don't think the regular season is that important. You know the reason why? Because I saw a higher seed in the Eastern Conference, have home court advantage, and it didn't help. LeBron James went to Boston, won that. In the West, what happened? 65-win team, only happened 20 times. Houston was now one of those teams that didn't win the championships. 15 of those teams had won a championship. Houston won 65 games. It didn't matter. Game number 7, people talk about Chris Paul and all that. Golden State did win that game. So both teams went on the road, and I have seen Cleveland, not only this year, but the previous 2 seasons, the regular season, it didn't matter that much. So I'm in disagreement with you as far as the regular season because the way I've seen it play, Cleveland, oh, man, y'all go ahead and have that. 1 seed, y'all can have that. We'll be a number 2. This year, we'll be a number 4. We saw Golden State this year as a number 2, still reaching the finals. So the regular season, I believe, with the NBA, unless they shorten the schedule, unless they take the 15 games off the schedule, 10 games off the schedule, which would make it more important at 82 games. If you get in the tournament, you got a chance.
Let's talk some football.
Let's do that.
Let's put basketball aside for just a second. Coming up, Peyton Manning has thoughts on Andrew Luck. Hear from him next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by Super Bowl champ Chris Canty. Chris, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning,
We got to get all this basketball out of the way so we can focus on football.
No, listen, it's the NBA Finals. Everybody's looking forward to the matchup. You got the best player in the world going up against a historically great team. So what's wrong with that?
Just trying to get you excited.
That sounds like
we're lucky if it goes 5 games.
Okay.
We're lucky if it goes 5 games.
I see them. You don't see that one game is all you got in winning?
I mean, listen, they only won 1 game last year, and they're a worse team than they were. They don't have Kyrie, so I mean.
Hey, listen, save this for Humpty and Canty on the radio. We're going to talk
going
with you.
Oh, no, we're leading with Yankees with Humpty.
Oh, okay. Oh, of course. It is New York City.
All right, here, though, we're going to talk some football. I feel like we're in the same position we were in last year with Andrew Luck. Still nursing the shoulder injury. Still high hopes he's going to be ready to go this season. But last year, he wasn't ready to go, and he was shut down for the year. This year, well, he's got high hopes again. Former Colt Peyton Manning weighed in, quote, I like to get all the reps in practice. It took me a few games before I felt like I was coming back. Getting as many reps as possible is key. I'm not so sure if that's advice or not, but that's what worked for Peyton Manning. Chris Canty, how important is it for Luck to get back to throwing?
I think it's important for Luck to get back to a point where he trusts his body to do what his mind is going to ask him to do on the football field. And if you look at Peyton Manning's commentary around it, he talked about having 10,000 reps and making sure that you get the first hit out of the way, the first comeback route out of the way, the first deep pass outside the numbers out of the way, the first 2-minute drive. Those are things that are important for the psychology of a player coming back from a major injury. We've both been there, CC, done that. You know how important it is to just get a feel back out there when you're on the field with your teammates. But the biggest thing for me with Andrew Luck and the Colts is that they surround him with an offensive line and a supporting cast that can prop him up. I mean, they've asked Andrew Luck to do way too much ever since they drafted him back in 2012. When you look at what they've done since then in the draft, it's basically franchise malpractice. I mean, they bought the house without the homeowner's insurance. They've only taken 1 offensive lineman in the first 4 years of his career with a high pick, which is second round or better. So the fact that they've addressed it, they drafted Ryan Kelly a few years ago. They'll get him back from injury. They drafted Quentin Nelson out of Notre Dame this year. That's going to help. They're going to fortify that guard center guard combination to go along with Anthony Costanzo at the left tackle. It's going to be a much better offensive line, arguably the best offensive line that Andrew Luck has had since he's been in the NFL. So I think that's where it starts for me, for this Colts team to get back to success and Andrew Luck to get back to playing the level of football that we want him to see from him.
Canty makes some good points. And I think as a fan, you need to realize how important the psyche of an athlete is. Even though he might be great or might have been great, what he has done of late will be on his mind. It's no different than Steph Curry when he was in a shooting slump. I'm sure he was shooting thousands of balls out of the game. And then until it went in the game, that's when it finally clicked. And what Peyton is talking about, because people forget, Peyton missed the whole year. So he understands what Andrew is getting ready to go through. So he's talking about that positive of knowing, I got my fastball. I can fire it in an 18-yard comeback. I can put some loft on it, cover 2 if they go down the sideline or go down the middle. If I get a blitz read, someone out of the middle of the defense, I can throw to my back. I know all these things that I've done before, but I haven't done them lately. Man, sports is about repetition, 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 so much that when you get under the gun that you can repeat what you've done in practice. That's what it's all about. And Peyton, no one has mastered that better than him. So his information, he's spot on as far as Andrew Luck. And Canty is even more spot on because he'll get his confidence throwing the ball back. But them first couple games, man, I can't get hit, and I can't get hit flush in the face because that is what he's used to. We have to introduce Andrew Luck to a different type of football. The way we take care of Aaron Rodgers, the way Brady is taken care of, and the way they took care of Peyton Manning when he played quarterback.
Here's my biggest concern, and it's something to be totally candid you've taught me. which is no matter how great of an athlete you are, no matter how established you are, practice really matters. It was one of the first major arguments we got in on this show 9 months ago.
It's one of the huge misunderstandings for people.
Yes, that didn't play.
And I hate to say it.
No, you're right.
The people who don't play. Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
This is an athlete.
Now, they go to work every
thing.
day,
Correct.
and they realize the repetition of doing their job, also with their skill level, that's what makes you great at doing something. But when you look at athletes, you're like, just go out there.
And the reason I'll just
Tell me your theory about training
I
camp.
had said this is one of our big first arguments was that if I had a team that didn't have a new coach,
First
didn't have a
fight,
new
I didn't
quarterback,
divorce him, no.
didn't have a new coordinator, I would take my top 20 guys on both sides of the ball and say, training camp and preseason, we're doing meetings and walkthroughs. I'm going to use that time for the bottom half of my roster, so he's going to make it that way. Even if I'm rusty, I'm going to come out of training camp healthy. And Chris's big point was, man, these guys got to keep getting better. They got to keep practicing. And you're right, it was an athlete, non-athlete thing where I think a lot of fans look at it and say, you practice to get to the NFL. Once you get there, you've mastered it. Then you're just fine-tuning.
That's when the practice just starts.
Right. And
I'm
so
telling you. I'm telling you.
and so it was just a fundamental misunderstanding. So that's a big lead up to this. I know Peyton missed a year. Brady missed a year. Man, Andrew Luck had surgery in January of 17. It is almost June of 18. We're talking about, what is that, 18 months? 19 months since he's been able to actually full-throated practice football. What's the rust factor of that? How big of a deal is that long of a layoff? It's not just, Peyton Manning had major neck surgery and missed less time. Tom Brady had his knee blown out, missed far less time. How much of a rust factor is the concern to you?
It's got to be huge. I mean, there's only one way to really get used to or get acclimated to doing football
There's
things.
only way to get, one way to get better at football.
That's just football, playing football. Like, you can do all of the off-season drills, the conditioning and strength work with the strength coaches at the facilities, but you got to go through the OTAs, the mini camps, and then when you get to training camp, putting the pads on and get used to that, because it's a different kind of grind and it's a different demand physically on your body. So Andrew Luck has got to check all of those boxes going through those different phases of the off-season program, and it sounds like he's going to start throwing the football a little bit after the start of June, somewhere in the middle of June, in the beginning of training camp, he's going to start throwing the football. But he's got to start checking all of those boxes throughout this offseason to make sure he's on track to be available for his team in the regular season.
Yes, I agree with Chris. There are some things that he's got, some major steps he's got to get through, and throwing the football and starting in June is not the best way.
I heard it's even a little later. Like, I read July, even
Well, they're saying between the middle of June and the beginning of training camp.
But I remember Drew Brees when he injured his shoulder, when he was going to New Orleans. The reason why I believe Drew Brees, not only because his overall work ethic, he's one of the hardest workers, but he has a pure throwing motion. Andrew Luck has a pure throwing motion. The reason why Mel Kiper said the things about Andrew wasn't only his brain, his IQ, but was his throwing motion. So that, I don't believe, would have been affected by the injury. So I have more confidence because it's the same motion that he's trying to. He just needs strength. He needs the muscle memory. He needs the reps of being on the field. But if he didn't have that if he wasn't a pure thrower of the football, I would be more concerned about accuracy, more concerned about velocity.
So that was going to be my question, is getting on the same page with receivers he hasn't really thrown the ball to, and where accuracy falls into that, because he can get a million reps and he can get his shoulders strong and he can throw and he can lift and all of it, but he's got to be in a game situation and start throwing to some of these guys. Long passes, short passes all over the field. What's that time frame?
Well, and I would imagine, Jenna, there's also one of the things that made Andrew Luck special was, and it was maybe also one of his weaknesses, was a fearlessness.
Yes, sir.
Not only fearlessness to take hits, but also I can fit this
ruggedness.
Ball. Right, a ruggedness, and I can rip it. Like, I can fit this ball in there. And that is, on the shoulder injury, I would think, you make fun of me, but as you know what I mean? Like, about my shoulder surgery. It was nothing like this, and it took forever to recover from, and I didn't have to throw a football. Like, the ability to trust your arm and to trust that I can do it with the same velocity and the same almost violence of it and have the same results.
It's going to be gradual. It's not going to be a situation where he's going to come back and it's going to be the Andrew Luck that we saw earn that contract that he got when he's making $23 million plus a year. It's not going to be that. If you look at what happened with Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, they had solid seasons coming off of those major injuries after they missed the full season. But that second year removed from that injury, they were that much better. You're talking about MVP caliber with both of them. So that's what you're going to have to look for from Andrew Luck. But, Jenna, to answer your question about being able to fit passes into tight windows, quarterbacks will have the ability to be more accurate if they have more time in the pocket and the offensive line keeps them clean.
Right.
So that, for me, is where it starts with Andrew Luck, making sure that the Colts offensive line protects him and the supporting cast does enough where they're not asking him to put the whole franchise on his back, kind of like what the Cleveland Cavaliers are asking LeBron James to do.
Oh, way to bring it full circle.
Speaking of LeBron, Chris, we're going to see a little bit later on the show. Coming up with that guy, LeBron, make the Houston Rockets the best team in the NBA. It's next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by NBA champ Antoine Walker. Antoine made wrinkles in the water yesterday when he said Boston might be the place for LeBron to land. What?
Yes.
Yeah,
I still believe it now.
People were calling me
all night.
It was great.
Antoine Walker got with you yesterday. I was like, what?
It was great.
I still believe it now.
All right.
Fun conversation.
It was. All right, let's keep that conversation going. Cleveland at Golden State getting ready for Game 1 tonight. LeBron James knows he's got his work cut out for the Cavs in this one, mainly because LeBron James, well, is the Cavs. Chris Paul and the Rockets will be watching and not playing after getting bounced by Golden State, but he's still working. CP3 has already reportedly begun recruiting LeBron James to the Rockets in free agency, Antoine. What do you think? Would LeBron joining the Rockets be any different than, say, Kevin Durant joining the Warriors?
Whoa, that's a tough one. I think it's two different situations.
Okay.
When you look at Houston's roster and what he'll be joining, it's not a very good roster. When you think Clint Capella is going to be gone, Trevor Reeves is not going to be on the roster. So Gerald Green, another guy who played big minutes for them, so they would have to fill a void. I think people got to understand when LeBron James made that move to the Miami Heat, it took them a whole year to figure out what roster and what guys to play with them. Then
the complimentary players.
And then eventually Mario Chalmers, Norris Cole, Shane Battier, Ray Allen, Chris Anderson. They started adding pieces around those three guys. But I don't think necessarily this is a great move for LeBron because if you look at how they play, James Harden, Chris Paul, and LeBron, it's just not a good mix. Where Kevin Durant, where he fit right in with Steph Curry because they move the ball. They were a team that get 25, 30 assists a game. They needed a guy who can close the game out. They didn't have to depend. They were really dependent on the three-point shot every game with Clay and Steph to get hot. Kevin Durant's a guy who can score from anywhere on the floor. So he gave them a versatility that they didn't have. I just think with Houston, LeBron going there, all those guys need the ball in their hand to be effective. James Harden has never been a guy that can spot up and shoot. Chris Paul improved his three-point shooting this year, but he still needs the ball in his hand. And LeBron is not deferring to anybody, okay? And nobody in this league, he's going to have the ball in his hand.
Yeah, so I'm with you on that. I don't believe it's the best fit. I believe Chris Paul is doing the best thing to try to get him a championship. He would have loved to have LeBron in a 7-game series.
So is that safe to say he's already going back to Houston, the deal already done?
Oh, I think that deal's done.
Yeah, I think they did one of them NBA wink-wink type stuff.
We
You know, like,
He turned down a big extension from the Clippers to agree to the trade to the Rockets. You don't do that unless, and you're not really supposed to do this, unless the Houston has said, hey, we got you. Like, we'll take care of it. So, yeah. I think Chris Paul's back.
Yeah, and LeBron, that's his guy. Like, this is, it's not like they're trying to establish a relationship. It's like him and Dwayne Wade. They had an existing relationship. I believe there's other better fits for LeBron. I believe going to Philadelphia, or I believe in even a total startup with the L.A. Lakers, because I believe that Paul George can go there. I believe that LeBron. I don't know if Popovich is going to trade Kawhi to the Lakers or trade him in the West.
Anywhere in the West.
Yeah, so I believe that Pop kind of holds that card right there. Also, that max deal. How do you turn down a max deal? But Houston, I don't believe is the best fit for LeBron because a lot of these players, how good is Chris Paul off the ball? That was our biggest question this year. Now, you're going to bring another ball handler? I believe LeBron's the only one that can play off the ball and still be a superstar.
And Antoine's saying he wouldn't do that. So, like, I know LeBron.
Well, totally deferring to it, I believe that he's the only one capable of doing that. You talked about Harden as a spot-up shooter. LeBron is not a great spot-up shooter. If you look at his three-point percentage, I'm going to get Dusty to do the numbers. How much better is he when he takes a dribble or two? He likes those diagonal threes, and he likes to put it on the ground a couple times before he raises up. So those three right there being three ball handlers, and you mentioned Kevin Durant. Clay is a spot-up shooter. Steph can move without the ball and dribbles the ball. What KD does is that third part of it.
It was a great complementary skill set. It was great. We can argue about the fit of LeBron to the Rockets. But one thing, I want to directly answer Jenna's question. Would this be the same as Kevin Durant joining the Warriors.
And when you said in the eyes of fans,
in the eyes, how about this? Here's what I care about. In the eyes of reality.
Okay.
Absolutely, unequivocally not. The Rockets win a championship last year, this year, anytime in the last 20 years? No. The Rockets have a 73-win team? No. Did the Rockets knock LeBron out of the playoffs when he was about to win a championship?
Up 3-1.
No. So when people say, oh, well, fine, but LeBron going to Miami was the same. No, if LeBron had joined Boston, if Boston, who had won a title and was the reason he couldn't get to the NBA Finals, if he had joined those Hall of Famers in Boston, that would have been similar to what, and I'm talking about with the first decision, to what KD did. Like, LeBron joining the Rockets, yes, he'd be joining an MVP, but it wouldn't be a team that's already won a championship, the overwhelming dominant team in the league, and your biggest rival. Like, those are apples and bowling balls. They're not comparable.
And also, Nick, you got to think about this, and I agree with you on that. But the problem is you have to think about LeBron James, first of all. Him going to Houston is totally different when KD went there. When he goes to Houston, he's actually putting on that team where when he went to Miami, he tried to get guys to come to Cleveland. Mm-hmm. And people don't understand that.
Yes.
He actually tried to get guys to come to Cleveland and say, hey, come play with me. Nobody want to live in Cleveland. I'm going to just keep it real.
Right.
Mm-hmm. In free agency, if I got a choice to go to Miami or Cleveland, I'm going to Miami. That's just how guys think. Guys want a little nightlife when they go play in the city, too. They want to be able to go to a nice restaurant.
Yes.
Want to be able to step out.
Nice weather, too.
Yeah, Cleveland don't offer that. So LeBron James was kind of stuck. So he went to a situation where Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, he can get in with those guys. But I also saw a clip yesterday where they talked about winning 7, 8 titles. Mm-hmm. You know, you go to Houston, is James Harden really trying to win a title? I mean, we know he wants to get there. Is that a main objective if he is to win a title? Chris Paul, yes.
What do you think his main objective is? The numbers, the accolades?
Well, I think when you don't make the adjustments that he needed to make in this year's playoffs, after going what he went through last year, I don't necessarily know if he's that concerned. I listened to his press conference afterwards, and not saying he has to be on TV crying and boo-hooing, but it just seemed like a level of, like, I'm disappointed.
Sure.
And I'm sure he may have went home and been very disappointed around his family and friends, but it just didn't seem right to me, because when you shoot 27 threes and miss them, and you're the best player on the floor, supposed to be one of the best players on the floor, and you don't change that, I just think you're not really making that conscious effort to be a champion.
So it's a hell of a statement about James Harden, who's going to win the league MVP this year. And I think a lot of people share the sentiment, which is, for some reason, there is a part of Harden that people have questioned is, how important is this to him? I don't think you can get as good as he is at the difficult parts of basketball without it being incredibly important to you.
No. There's a lot of athletes out there. They're into the benefits of them being good compared to being on a team that's great.
But here's the thing.
So I believe you can work hard because of the individual benefits you're going to have.
Right, but he got the biggest individual benefit you can get, which is the Supermax contract. And after that, embraced Chris Paul. After that, embraced the things that led to
he had no chance to win in the West.
Right, but I'm saying that's to my point, which is I do think winning's important to James Harden. Now,
winning on the championship level, there's different levels of winning. How much are you willing to sacrifice? And guys, and what he's saying is the people he's been around, the superstars that he's been around, he's seen more of a sacrifice in what they're doing and in their game development to try to get that. He hadn't seen that with Harden. That's why he puts it in question.
Think about it. You believe those guys are going to all take a back seat? Dwayne Wade was a great, Robin. And then Chris Bosh was efficient with 10, 11, 12 shots. Can Chris Paul be efficient with 12 shots? Can James Harden be efficient with 12 shots? We don't know. You look at the big three that they put together in OKC. All three of those guys are going to be Hall of Famers. They were a disappointment, OKC. Mm-hmm. There's no way you put those three guys on paper. If you say these three guys are going to be together, you think a championship. Westbrook almost won many games by himself the year before by himself. Then you bring those guys on the team. So it's a lot of guys' mentality. We can always say fit does matter. And mindset does matter. LeBron James has to go to a place where other guys want to win championships, understand his legacy, and want to be on that same wavelength. And every player in the league is not on that.